Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Phil Richard, and I am honored to be able to host you during this event. And in case you're not sure what the event is, today, Mayor Donchess of Nashua was able to announce that the Greater Nashua metropolitan area, which includes Nashua, Brookline, Amherst, Hollis, Merrimack, Milford, Mont Vernon, Hudson, Litchfield, and Mason, which is a very good-sized chunk of our state, has been certified by 3 federal agencies as having effectively ended veteran homelessness. You may be able to tell from my dress that this is a particularly poignant event for me, and I'm just terribly honored to be here hosting you. But I'm also a retired member of the largest team in the entire world, and I am very much aware that every single member of every team is vital in getting the work done. And so in this room, you all should be patting yourselves on the back because you deserve a piece of this celebration. I want to particularly honor Senator Hassen. Thanks so much, representing the state of New Hampshire. Mayor Donchess of Nashua. Other members of a great team, Chief Andrew Lavoie from our police department, Chief Gallipo from our fire department, and Chris Strauss from the AMR, American Medical Response Team. All our teams that have dramatically contributed to the successful achievement of ending veteran homelessness in the region. There are a number of members of the state and city and local delegations here today, and I want to thank you as well because everyone has a role to play in helping us with this achievement. Lynn King, the chair of our board of directors, and Peter Kelleher, who is the CEO of the Partnership for Successful Living and Harbor Homes. And yes. And without Peter's inspired leadership, we would not be here today, ladies and gentlemen. So I thank Peter. You'll hear from him later. And I can't forget to thank our veterans, the veterans of all of the services of the United States military, the veterans of those organizations that serve us, the sheriff's organization, the fire department, the police department. All of these veterans have contributed so much to our way of life, and we are so honored to have them in our midst. So without further ado, I would like to invite the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Honor Guard to post the colors. I would now like to invite Nichole DiVietro to sing the national anthem for us. Nichole?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the
If you would all now join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Can you post the colors? I'd like to now invite Mayor Jim Donchess to say a few words. Mayor?
Well, good morning to everyone, and welcome to Nashua, especially Senator Hassen and Dr. Michael-Mayo Smith, who you're going to hear from soon, Mr. Gregory Carson from HUD, and Dr. Smith is from, of course, the VA. So I want to thank you for being here for this announcement and this very important celebration. And I would like to thank our co-hosts here, Peter Kelleher at Harbor Homes and the Partnership for Successful Living, for staging and putting on this very important event. On top of everything that the Partnership and Harbor Homes has done over a number of years to make sure that we have effectively ended veteran homelessness. And without them, this could never have been achieved. And a very important accomplishment for our community and for our state. Now, Granite Staters and Nashuans have answered the call to service dating back to the beginning of our history. At the time of the first shot heard round the world back at Lexington, a number of people, soldiers from Nashua, then known as Dunstable, New Hampshire, answered the call, and nearly half of all the fighting men here of fighting age here in Nashua, then Dunstable, headed down to Lexington, and they were called at that time the Dunstable Boys. And they said goodbye to the community, their families, their loved ones, their shops, their farms and everything, put their lives at stake, and they took up arms in the fight for the independence that our country still enjoys today. In fact, if you visit the monument at Bunker Hill, you can read that more than half of the patriots who then fought were from New Hampshire, and with over 100 of the people there at Bunker Hill come right from the Greater Nashua area. So this tradition of service and dedication has continued throughout every conflict in our nation's history, now including men and women in uniform serving causes overseas and in harm's way today. So I would like, of course, to take a moment now to thank those of you, such as Courtney, who you'll hear from later, who have served our country. I want to thank you for your courage and your sacrifice, and everyone in Nashua joins me in expressing our appreciation. And it is because of this sacrifice and because of your service that we're all here today. Because in 2015, Nashua answered the call from the President of the United States, who issued a challenge to put an end to veteran homelessness. We have the responsibility to care for those who have sacrificed for us. Here in Nashua, we take care of our own. And the elimination of veterans' homelessness is an example of that caretaking. President Lincoln said in another way in his second inaugural address back in 1865 that we must be committed to, quote, care for him who shall have borne the battle. Part of that care requires ensuring that our veterans have adequate housing. So thanks to the efforts of our community partners, Harbor Homes, the Partnership for Successful Living, with the support of the federal, the state, and local resources, with the support also of the Greater Nashua Continuum of Care and many, many others here in our region, we are able to celebrate today the functional end of veteran homelessness, a great, great achievement. Now, we know that we are not done because we will never be done making sure that our veterans have adequate housing, have homes, and are properly taken care of. The challenge that we're answering is a commitment that we need to focus on and continue to keep every day. It requires vigilance and dedication. And from all of you from our community, I call upon you to help us keep the promise and the commitment that we have made. So if you ever hear of a veteran who is facing homelessness, or you meet a veteran who is facing homeless, there is a coordinated access line that you can call, which is 844-880-9911, or you can email hope@newhampshirepartnership.org. So before I conclude, once again, I would like to thank all of you who've contributed to this effort, particularly our community partners, Partnership for Greater Living, for Successful Living, and Harbor Homes, and the VA, and everyone else who's been involved. I want to thank you all for helping reach this really very important day. And again, it's great to have you all here. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to introduce Courtney Lobao, who's going to give us a veteran's perspective. Courtney?
For those of you guys not used to public speaking, that is a step. And did I hear that we have chiefs of fire, police, medical rescue? Thank God. I might pass out. At least the service will be quick. Woo. Well, they asked me to come in and give my story, and I wasn't quite sure how far to go back with it. I mean, I guess you got to start with the root, right? My father was an architect, and he made pretty good money. There were problems in the home. My parents didn't get along very well, so I created a history of instability. A lot of people might choose to just make an excuse, but I learned that excuses just get you into trouble. They don't get you moving forward. To make a kind of a very long story short, kind of fast forward to I'm about 9 years old. My parents have finally divorced, and I get some stability in Manchester, New Hampshire. 6 years. 6 years of stability going through the same school system. And that was huge because that had instilled in me a sense of home. Now, I still had this feeling of, wandering and, wanting to move around, keep moving, never wanting to settle, because it was never taught to me that you have to grow roots before you can grow. And every time I needed a do-over, I would come back to Manchester. It was home. It was the only real home, only place I had really set roots. So from the time I hit 18, I realized that, hey, I'm an adult now and I can go where I please. I left my mother's house. I left my mother's house in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and hopped on a bus, intending to come to Manchester, but I didn't make it. I ended up making a little stop in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Stayed in a shelter for about a month, and then they let you out. Doesn't matter what time of year, they let you go. It's kind of their way to motivate people to get up and get moving. Well, my time had run out, so I ended up sleeping under a bridge, under a pile of blankets for a little while. There was nobody bringing me breakfast. There was nobody really bringing me anything. If I wanted to eat, I had to walk a mile down the road. So I thought that was kind of important because, well, I had to motivate myself. No one was bringing me anything. I had to go get it. So eventually I found some work, made some money, got another bus ticket, made it back to Manchester. Still not a whole lot better. But I made a friend before I left Wyoming, and well, she ended up traveling with me. We ended up leaving Manchester and going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Staying in the soup kitchen there. I'd regularly volunteer in the kitchen, helping to make people breakfast. Out of the 300 or so people we'd serve each morning, most of them would come in and complain about little things. The coffee is terrible. Oh, everything just awful. But every once in a while, you get 2 or 3 people that would say thank you, and that meant the world to me. It's not about the 300; it's about the 3. So I remembered that today. I remember that every day going through this process. Every day. And I try to take that opportunity to say thanks. Peter and Carol and a few other key players. Shake their hand and say thank you for keeping a roof over my head for the last, 7 years, I think. 7 years my head hasn't been sleeping in the snow because of these guys. So from Oklahoma, I ended up signing up and enlisting into the Navy. I was a submarine sonar technician. I made Petty Officer 3rd Class. I did complete my dolphins. I shipped quals, did pretty well on the board from what I heard. Walked out with 3 lookups, and I didn't sleep until I got them. Life was hard on the boat. There was a lot of things that were kind of easy. You had the creature comforts. You're sleeping indoors. You have 4 meals a day. Every 6 hours, they're feeding you. I hear horror stories about how the Army and the Marines have their, MREs and just sleeping in holes. Well, I had a bed. The worst thing I had to really worry about is I'm sharing it with 2 other. I'm sharing 2 beds with 2 other guys. Oh no! Unless I'm down in the torpedo room when I get my own rack. Nobody wants to sleep down in the torpedo room. I don't know why. It's noisy. It's noisy. So what? I get my own rack, my own space. The whole bunk is my storage. You got to believe that storage space is a premium on a submarine. Woo. I'll take the torpedo room any time. It's not like I'm spending a whole lot of time in the rack anyway. You got to get qualified. You got to get hot. Time in the rack is wasted time. So eventually finished that. I got out and came back to Manchester. Wasn't sure what to do. Got a job at a Boston market. Stuck around Manchester for a couple months. I started being lonely for family. By now, family had spread around across the country. So I started traveling the country to find them. Sister and brother in Minnesota, a little fertile Minnesota. Probably has more cows than people. I stopped off in Rock Springs, Wyoming, kind of where it all started again. I was just looking for family, and I had a mother and another brother in Rock Springs. Well, my mother was lonely too. She drove truck for a living, big truck. So I hung out with her for 2 months and then decided, no, Mom, I need to go my own way. So I went back to her house. It's a double-wide trailer, and looking back now, I should have bought the thing. I kind of wish I had. Oh, it would have been so nice living in Wyoming, making 60 grand a year, and having like a $200 house payment or lot rent. Bills, all my bills less than $500. That would have been nice in retrospect. But I didn't. I moved in with my girlfriend, eventually married her. We had a son, a son I haven't seen in probably almost 9 years now. It's a source of heartache for me, but also sort of a source of strength. So every time I start thinking that I will just cash in my chips, we'll just let it all go, I think, what would my son think? What would that do to him? So I'll find a way to keep going for him. Eventually, I may see him again. And I want him to see me strong. I want him to see that I pined for him. I waited for him. So, the marriage only lasted 3 years. Don't you always know it? Whenever any of you guys have been divorced, you know, you were the hero, you were the rock during the marriage, and then all of a sudden the divorce comes, and you're the devil. I don't get that, but such is life, right? Any of you guys have kids? Got a few parents out there, yeah. So you can kind of understand a little bit about, you know, how I might feel, how any of us might feel. A little confused growing up, and now you've got a kid of your own, and starting to wonder how they feel, how they think. It's my cross to bear. It's just my cross to bear. Where was I? Oh, the divorce happened, and it's time for another do-over. So I come back to Manchester, and this is we're getting a lot closer to the present. See, I didn't know exactly what to do. I just knew that, hey, there's a shelter over there, New Horizons in Manchester. There's a roof over my head and at least one meal a day. As I found out later, it's just one meal a day. So you learn not to be picky. You appreciate everything you're given. Well, they've got caseworkers that they set you up with. Supposed to set you on the path, you know, to bring yourself up. My thought was, hey, this is what she does. She might know something. At least as long as I follow her program, I should have a place to stay until I figure things out. So I just started doing what she asked me to do right now. not sit around and wait for it, not sit around and, you know, get around to it when I feel like it, but I'm going to go do it now so I can come back and report to her the next morning, because you had to make an appointment the previous night. I can see her the next day and say, hey, this is done. Here's what you needed. One of the things was, well, a couple of things was applying for disability. Whether I'm disabled or not, you know, says just go and do it. Just go ahead. They'll probably never approve you, but it's showing some steps, you know? Go talk to the VA, see if they can help you. Well, that opened some doors. That opened some doors. So all of a sudden, Harbor Homes is notified that I'm there. I was in the middle of a culinary arts program. It's training, it's job training, knife skills, food safety, you know, eventually to get a job in a kitchen. I finished that, and all of a sudden Andrea Reed shows up in her little car, stuffing what little I had into the back seat. And she drove me down here to Nashua. I haven't been back to Manchester since, except to visit the VA. For a long time, Harbor Homes had a Veterans First program that had a van to go with it that would chauffeur all of us veterans up to our appointments. It was a little rough. Sometimes you had an early appointment and somebody else had a later appointment, so you had to sit around and wait for it. But there are worse things to worry about, right? You bring something, you bring a book. You learn to bring a book. So we come down here and we've got caseworkers, again, setting us on the path. Well, my path had started kind of rough. See, I was staying in a housing over at Amherst. I can't remember the name of it. I know you'd remember, Scott. But there was probably about, I don't know, a dozen of us that in a back part of this facility. I know Scott will remember, but at any rate, we ended up moving out to Buckingham Palace, as we used to call it, Buckingham Place. It was nice. It was nice. I mean, really, the apartments that we were given, we weren't sharing with anybody. We weren't sharing with anybody. We had a full apartment that you would probably pay $1,200 a month for, just given to us for nothing. Well, after I had forgotten a pot of pasta on the stove and kind of scared some people, I was asked to leave, and this just kind of stressed me out enough. I ended up committing myself, volunteering to go to the Bedford facility. It was nice to have a safe place to kind of come down and, you know, get my head straight. This kind of started a path of medication, you know, working with doctors and trying to find the right medication for me. Well, eventually I came out, and guess who's there? Harbor Homes again. Only this time, they're moving me into Delanus across the street. Wow. Did I deserve it? I didn't know. I didn't want to screw this up again. So it's a slightly different situation. Okay. Harbor Homes has always been there. From there, I went over to 14 Amherst, which was a house of healing, round the clock attention. I eventually started collecting income just before my time ran out there, and pretty much been moved into housing and self-sufficient ever since. Hey, thank you, Peter, Carol, again. I mean, really. Thank you for your service. I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, thank you, Courtney, for your service and for your story. Buckingham Palace, I like that. I'm going to have to use that later on. I didn't know Peter was running such a luxury facility. If you're watching Victoria on PBS, you know, now we... Well, it's my pleasure now to introduce Senator Hassen, who has been working on behalf of veterans and to end veterans' homelessness for a long time now. As governor for 2 terms, she was extremely committed to this cause. And I've seen her here at Harbor Home so many different times in supporting this effort. Now in the Senate, for the last few months, she's doing the same thing, supporting our veterans, fighting for health care and other very important things. I know everybody knows her and is familiar with her, and therefore I just give you Senator Hassen.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for the introduction and for all your work leading Nashua and your work and commitment to making sure that we are effectively ending veterans' homelessness in the Greater Nashua area. And thank you, Lieutenant Richard and Dr. Mayo-Smith, to Greg Carson, to all the elected officials and other community leaders who are here today, and mostly all of our brave veterans who are here and who aren't here. And a special thank you to you, Courtney, for sharing your experience and your story with all of us. It makes a real difference. It is really great to be with all of you and to celebrate your work to effectively end veteran homelessness here in Nashua. Our veterans have demonstrated a truly selfless commitment to serving our country and to the freedoms that we hold so dear. So as they protect us and make our freedoms possible, it's our responsibility to ensure that all veterans have the support that they need and that they have earned. Unfortunately, veterans are more likely than other Americans to experience chronic homelessness, and that is simply unacceptable. So all citizens, but especially our veterans, deserve an opportunity to live healthy and productive lives, and housing is the foundation of that. It's absolutely critical to ensure that veterans can live independently, can contribute to our economic and civic life. That also spurs economic development and supports a strong middle class that we can all participate in and benefit from. Harbor Home's efforts have been truly essential and visionary in this effort. It's been a model for our entire state and frankly for our entire country. I've been talking about what Harbor Homes does since I got to Washington, and especially with conversations, for instance, for our new Secretary of the VA, about so many of the things we are doing here in New Hampshire, but especially the model that Harbor Homes has developed. During my time as governor, I was proud to work with Harbor Homes on the Housing Choice Vouchers for Veterans program, a program that helps veterans transition to permanent housing in the community, which of course opens more beds to serve homeless veterans at Harbor Homes. So these efforts, your efforts, have been so critical, but we also all know that our work is far from over. We have to continue to fight to end veteran homelessness in New Hampshire and across our country. And I am honored to be able to partner with all of you, not only here in the state, but to do my very best in Washington to make this vision and this goal a reality. In the Senate, I'm going to continue to work to end veterans' homelessness and focus on policies to support veterans, service members, and their families. This week, I joined my colleagues to introduce new bipartisan legislation to assist and empower women veterans. This legislation includes measures that will work to combat homelessness among female veterans. And by the way, it's named the Deborah Sampson Act. For those of you who don't know, Deborah Sampson fought in the Continental Army. She had to disguise herself as a man to do it. So we thought it was appropriate to name this legislation in her honor and really focus on the fact that while we are making some progress, we really aren't doing enough to recognize the women veterans in our communities, especially recognizing that since 9/11, women have stepped up and are increasingly serving in combat roles, and really need the kinds of supports that reflect that we understand their unique experiences. So I'm very pleased to be a co-sponsor with Senators Tester and Bozeman. It's a bipartisan bill on that measure. I've also introduced legislation to provide education benefits to service members who often have to leave behind schools, jobs, and homes to serve their country. And yesterday, I joined colleagues in introducing the VA Appeals Modernization Act of 2017 to reform the appeals process for veterans' benefits. I'm going to continue to listen to veterans here in New Hampshire and to all of you who work with veterans here in New Hampshire and work with my colleagues on policies to support veterans. I want to commend Harbor Homes for your work. Today marks a truly important milestone, but we can't be complacent. One homeless veteran is one too many. There is obviously more work to be done, and I look forward to continue working with all of you to do it. You know, part of the thing that we always have to remember is that part of our work is to change or create policies that make supporting veterans possible. But changing policies is never enough. It is the work on the ground, implementing those policies and staying committed to those policies and understanding how they're working or not and changing them that really makes a difference. A couple of you have very kindly this morning remarked to me that I come back here a lot. I can't, one, think of a better place to be, but two, I come back here a lot because the only way to make change and infuse change and sustain change and improve and strengthen is to be constant and to be vigilant. This is hard work we do because it involves coming together and getting to know each other better. It involves understanding our fellow human beings and breaking down the barriers and sometimes the stigmas that exist that have kept change from happening. Courtney, I can't tell you how important your willingness to tell your story is. It may have been kind of overwhelming to step up here, but you stepped up. Bravery is measured in a lot of different ways. And your sharing of your story this morning was a very, very brave thing to do. But that is also what spurs real and consistent change. It's when people speak up and say, this is who I am and this is what happened. You served your country already on that sub. Thank you. And you're continuing to demonstrate the kind of bravery and courage that makes America what it is. And you know, you said at one point something that I have heard from so many veterans, which is, I don't know if I deserved it. You deserved it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for those wonderful words, Senator Hassen. I would now like to introduce, I'm going to make a couple of introductions here. We're going to hear from some community partners. The first will be Dr. Michael-Mayo Smith, who is the network director, the New England network director for the Department of Veterans Affairs, followed by Gregory Carson, who is the field office director for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So first, Dr. Mayo Smith, Dr. Smith.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Courtney, again. I'm here, and Senator and the Mayor, thank you all for your support. I'm here really representing the employees of the VA healthcare system, and we have the great pleasure of taking, and honor of taking care of over 250,000 veterans here in New England. And they're wonderful employees, and they're doing amazing things every day. And there's hundreds of stories like Courtney's of people who've been helped and have turned their lives around. And it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to do that. We have, in the VA, we have a particular understanding of military culture, and we have particular expertise for caring for those conditions which are unique to or common among veterans. And as Senator Hassen mentioned, homelessness is one of them. Actually, from the very beginning of our nation's history, back to the Revolutionary War, following every major conflict, there would be a surge or an increase in homelessness among veterans. And perhaps it's the experience of serving in the military with separation from home and community and readjustment after the experience of war, but we've seen increased risk of homelessness among veterans. Now, in 2010, the VA set a goal of ending homelessness among veterans. And with that aspirational goal, we undertook a broad effort involving many community partners. We have housed over 110,000 veterans and awarded more than 79,000 housing vouchers. And by 2016, we'd worked together, we'd reduced veteran homelessness by more than 50% across the country. And one of the things, and now actually veterans are at lower risk of being homeless than the general population because of this effort. You know, in the 1920s, the Congress passed a law that any veteran could go to the VA and get health care. So today we're still working on trying to get health care for everybody in the country. But I think about this, the very first segment of our population that was guaranteed health care were the veterans. This was the 1920s. Our effort now on homelessness, I think of it as, once again, maybe we're at the front with veterans. Actually, every citizen, every human being deserves a home, a shelter. And we're starting out with the veterans. So this is the effort, and think about this. Maybe we can come back here, some of us in 50 years, and think we're trying to get every American, no homelessness for any American. But we're starting out, and we're trying hard to do that with the veterans. We've also found, one of the things that we found is the tremendous importance of working with community partners. The VA sometimes has a history of being sort of an entity unto itself, often on a hill, in a brick building. But we've learned that working together with partners, and I look around here and I see these signs here, and I'm saying, oh, these are the community partners who are helping out. We know we've worked with Peter Kelleher and the Harbor Homes and the continuum of care that he leads in the Nashua area. And they've really been a wonderful partner, an example of partnerships. So I want to ask everybody to give them a round of applause. And the Partners for Successful Living, of which you're one tree in a larger forest, right? And we're very pleased. It's very exciting for myself and for us to have achieved this important benchmark, ending homelessness among veterans for the Nashua. Nashua joining a fairly small and select group of cities and metropolitan areas around the country. I will also mention, though, that the state of Connecticut, the secretary was up here a year or so ago at a ceremony there, that the state of Connecticut was the very first state to end chronic homelessness among veterans. So I hope that the success here in Nashua will spread, And soon we can celebrate that the entire state of New Hampshire has achieved this important benchmark. And I know we have a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of committed people, wonderful leadership, and we're going to do everything we can to work and get all 6 states in New England and then eventually all the states in the country achieve this. So on behalf of the new Secretary of the VA, Dr. David Shulkin, on behalf of the President, who I know has a very deep commitment to veterans, and on behalf of the American people, I want to thank everyone here for the good work that you're doing. Thank you.
Again, welcome for the 3rd or 4th or 7th time this morning, but I'm glad everybody could be here today. It's always wonderful to come back to Harbor Homes. I've actually been coming back to Harbor Homes even longer than Peter has come back to Harbor Homes in this building. It's a long story, but the certification for ending veterans homelessness has been a bit of a struggle over a couple of years. But the idea of assisting veterans to get them off the street and give them a safe place, shelter to live, has been going on for a very long time. Governor Benson had signed the first agreement to help assist with getting to end veterans homelessness. That tradition was carried on with Senator Shaheen, at that time Governor Shaheen and Governor Lynch. And a couple of years ago, we had another governor who really stepped up to the plate and decided that she was really going to push really hard on the statewide basis and actually instituted a plan where all of the agencies in the state get together once a week on Wednesdays, and we talk about every single veteran who is homeless or is about to be homeless or is in danger of being homeless, and what are we across the state and the federal government doing about to do it. So Governor Hassen deserves a big applause for actually getting the state on getting that road. Again, not with just the state, but within the city of Nashua. I think first it was Mayor Streeter and then Mayor Lozo had worked on this program, and in partner with Peter, the first application to get certified for ending veterans homelessness was submitted. I had sat down with Peter and we talked about the program and what it requires in order to get basically a statement that says, we have ended veterans homelessness in terms that we've identified veterans, we're getting them off the street, et cetera. And Peter said, that mark is too low. He goes, we need to get the veterans off the street and into shelters. And that's in Harbor Homes, and Peter and all the partners took up that mantle and basically did that. It was kind of a disappointment when we submitted the first application and we actually got rejected. And we were all a little upset about that, but the reason was that Peter was using a lot of different programs and a lot of innovative ways that the folks in DC didn't quite get, that they were cobbling together, and they said, we understand what you're doing, but that's we're not going to count that particular widget the way that you're doing it. Now I say this because in actuality, Peter and the city of Nashua had identified and gotten every veteran off the street here in Nashua. So Nashua is one of those places that really, truly has ended veterans homelessness. Mayor Donchess and Peter got together and said, look, we're going to do the certification again, even though we've accomplished the goal internally. And Peter said, again, mark is too low. Let's expand it because we serve a lot of surrounding communities and areas. And Peter, along with the mayor, submitted a separate application and then just recently received the certification from the Interagency Council on Ending Homelessness to get certified as ending veterans homelessness. So Peter and the mayors have done a terrific job over the last few years, along with the assistance of the governors, and have really done a terrific job. Nashua is only the second city in New England who has actually been given certification that they have ended veterans homelessness. So there, Peter, everybody deserves a round of applause for all the work that they've done. As I said, getting these certifications for Peter and Harbor Homes and the community is actually, like you said, the bar wasn't raised high enough for Peter and Harbor Home standards. As I said before, Buckingham Palace place, and by the way, I know Senator McCain was the first person to refer to it as Buckingham Palace when he came up for a tour when we were doing another ceremony like this years ago. But Peter and Harbor Homes and the community partners through the different programs from the VA with the VASH vouchers, they have housing right now about 200 veterans through programs that are with VASH and other veteran-sponsored organizations. They served about 1,000 veterans last year, and I'm going to say several thousands worth of veterans over the last decade easily. That's probably a very low number. the amount of work that Harbor Homes and Peter have done over the years to help veterans and to help everybody in the community is just so easy to identify. You come to this building, you see what's happened over the years. When, you know, first this was the home for Harbor Homes, and now the clinic, and the wonderful clinic. And if you're not taking a tour, you need to see this building, because this is the benchmark that the entire country should be replicating as how we serve homeless people. So if I haven't said Peter's name enough, I'm going to say it one more time or two. I really appreciate all the work they've done. I've been there. I've been in the background. I've seen the work that everybody's done to get to this point. I've seen the amount of effort that Peter has done as an individual and as a leader for not only Harbor Homes, but for the entire community. I get the pleasure of actually getting to introduce Peter. And I'm not going to talk a lot about Peter in terms of his background here, but Peter has been working with Harbor Homes for 35 years. He's taken it from a small little organization into an organization that does every program with every federal and state agency that I've ever seen or heard of, and many that I have not. When I came to HUD, I said, well, what programs does Harbor Homes participate in? And my staff person said, all of them. So that made it pretty easy to do. But if we could replicate Peter and put him around all over the country, I think we'd solve a lot of the problems with not only veterans homelessness, but homelessness in servicing low-income people and families in general. So without any more making Peter's head any bigger, I introduce Peter Gallagher, my hero.
Wow. Thank you, Greg. That was way more than I deserve. Not enough. Today is just a wonderful day. I consider it to be a day of cautious celebration because we've made an achievement, but so much more is still left to go in the state and even here in the work that we do with Nashua. So I'm just thrilled that we're all here, and I'm amazed how many people have come out for this. Thank you so much. I'm the person that's the closer, so I will try to keep this short, but there are so many different people and just agencies and so forth that contributed into this along the way. It's almost impossible for my limited brain to remember every piece, but from the veteran service organizations doing things like helping us with furniture for a new apartment for a veteran, to Governor Hassen, when she got us all to the table every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. We were trained, and that was hugely successful. But she also got 25 units earmarked for veterans. That really pushed us over the top here in this region. So for that, I thank you. And of course, Greg and HUD has been a partner with us from our very beginning in 1982 in so many different ways. I could I'll use all my time just to talk about how we've worked with HUD, the Housing Finance Authority, and of course the VA here in Manchester. Daniel Ocker has been an incredible partner up there, and all of the staff, that HPAP staff, and Robert, and all of his staff, Emily, and regional, Boston, I can go on just talking about every single sector. But I also want to tell you that when I said we're not done, we're also in the middle of trying to develop 25 new units of permanent housing, project-based VASH, in the Plymouth area. So we're still working it, and we're hoping very much to end veteran homelessness in the entire state of New Hampshire. We're not that far off, and I think we can do this if we just press on, keep the focus on. I just want to also thank the mayor for his leadership in so many different ways in the city. There's a big sign in front of City Hall that says Nashua supports our veterans, and today we're living it. And also our board of directors, Phil Richards, been doing an outstanding job here today, thank you. And just all the wonderful support that I've gotten from the board as a whole. And Courtney, I'm so grateful to you, Courtney, for really chapter by chapter helping people understand the sort of process that might occur and the amount of insight that I think it gave everyone here in this room. And just, you are truly brave for having shared that. And I think it will help many other people as well. So I wanted to just sort of reflect for a second and say, you know, what got us into this? You know, if you try to reflect back into the year after 9/11, how we were all feeling that year. And I remember like a spike being driven through my brain something that year. I was thinking about the enormous sacrifices and bravery that we were seeing with people going overseas and the sacrifices leaving their families behind. And in Homeless Memorial Day celebrations that or services that we would have, we would be reflecting on veterans that were lost on the streets, on the banks of the river here in Nashua, and other places throughout the city, where they just were dying on the streets and homeless. And that is the spike that went through my brain. And I just felt like, all right, we got to do something. And from that day, we've been working at it. And, you know, the prospect of ending veteran homelessness, if you think about that to yourself, is that, oh, okay, we just got to get some apartments and put a roof over people's head. And you learn that there's so much more that's involved with it. It's also about creating a robust system going forward so that veterans, wherever they are in the state, will have opportunities for permanent housing and affordable housing. It means things like paying attention to our housing authorities and making sure that they have veterans on their boards and are really keeping an eye out for veterans as they come through the system. I want to take a moment to we have so many heroes in our community, our staff, our SSVF staff. I cannot thank you enough. Our GPD staff, our HVRP staff, you guys are the true heroes, really. Where's Catherine Byrne? She's hiding. Catherine Byrne. She would put up with me. I'd call her at 7:30 in the morning and say, what is a veteran in our emergency shelter for? They need permanent housing. So thank you for everybody for putting up with my persistence and bothering everybody on a daily basis on this. It's just, you know, and thank you to our finance folks that work so hard, and people like Vanessa who helps get us the money to keep all of this going. It's just, we have so many, many pieces that just are part of this effort. And we have a very special group of volunteers in the community called the Ending Homelessness Fund, that a large part of their work has been to get funds to, every year, they raise $200,000 to help end chronic homelessness among veterans and other populations, and they're heroes. You know, the Keatings and the David Gilmore, honorary chair, I mean, they come every month and they stay at it, and they stay at it, and they get reports on the numbers, and they keep us honest and keep the process moving. So just another group of heroes that have really, and you know, you can't end veteran homelessness unless you have a supportive group of landlords. You know, and our community's been blessed that we have had some landlords that have done backflips. We go into their office, Gothia Real Estate. Is Glenn here?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm Connie.
Oh, you are Connie. Let me tell you about Connie. Connie comes from a military family, and she our staff call, the door is open. They got units, they're there. I mean, they do that day service. Sometimes we come in 3 times a day, they got 3 apartments a day. So, well, thank you to Glenn and your entire operation for being a huge example of exactly what we're trying to hope occurs for helping our veterans that have helped serve our country. So thank you so much for that. I think that's pretty much everything I have time for, but just know that there are many more people that I just have not had a chance, but it's been a process. So it's not just about the housing, it's about figuring out the 50 different little processes that need to occur and work together to make something like this go forward. So I'm just grateful that we've gotten to this point, and let's keep the effort going forward. And as the mayor has said, if anyone hears of a homeless veteran in our community, please let us know. You need to know that, so what gives me confidence to know that we've achieved this? It's been about a year and a half now that we have barely had a single veteran in any emergency shelter in the Greater Nashua area. And that's something that just doesn't happen. And we have 8 units open today. Anybody looking? If you can find so let me just end and say thank you to everyone here for coming, and try to contact those numbers that were given to you earlier, 844-800-9911 for the coordinated intake number, and hope at nhpartnership.org if you do identify any veteran. I also want to mention the League of Cities that has also helped nationally in ending veteran homelessness and giving us a lot of support and technical assistance in keeping us on the journey. So now I'd like to invite the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Honor Guard to retire the flag. Thank you all for coming today.